Hello everyone, and welcome back to Song of Saya. Previously, Koji got himself a gun, and he was going to go pay us a visit. And by visit, I mean visit. Of course. So, let us continue, and see what happens. When he steps out of the cabin's front door, Koji shivers as the wind tears into his skin. To his surprise, the outside air is even colder than the mud at the bottom of the well. Perhaps the cramped space mitigated the cold somewhat. If he had been exposed to this chill all night long, he would surely have frozen to death. Koji finds two cars parked in the yard. The Mini next to his Accord must be Ryoko's. When he sits behind the wheel of his car, he gets some relief from the feeling that he has taken the first step, however small, back into his world. He sips the sports drink, wetting his parched throat, then washes down some jelly. His stomach rebels at the sudden influx of food after 36 hours on empty, but he manages to force down the urge to vomit. Koji needs the energy. No matter how hard it is, he must regain enough stamina to overcome the challenges ahead. After forcing down as much food as he can handle, Koji leans back in his seat and takes a short breath. When he begins to feel himself again, he reaches into the back seat and pulls his spare cell phone out of his bag. He never expected that carrying two phones would be such a stroke of luck. As he calls up Fuminori's number and prepares to hit send, Koji is overcome by a flood of emotion. Rage, despair, sorrow, pity. He isn't able to decide what to feel towards his friend. However, there's no time to dwell on the past. Every second lost diminishes the chance of saving Omi and Yo. Koji refuses to consider that it may already be too late. He steels himself and presses the button, then holds the phone to his ear as it rings. The shrill sound seems to go on for longer than it ever has in his life. Right now, Fuminori's phone must be displaying the number of the caller. Koji wonders what his reaction will be when he sees it. The call goes through. In the silence on the end of the phone, Koji senses surprise, apprehension, and dark fury. Feeling slightly gratified, Koji delivers the first jab. What a surprise. How did you manage it? As Koji is about to answer, an idea suddenly comes to him. Koji says, a plan forming rapidly in his mind. He pauses to let that sink in. Then, with satisfaction filling his voice, he says, Fuminori's gasp tells Koji that the advantage is his. Keeping his voice bold, he decides to further exaggerate the truth. You son of a bitch. It's obvious from Fuminori's tone that anger has overwhelmed his reason. Koji's bluff is working perfectly. His victory is tainted, however, as Fuminori's response to the name, Saya, brings a cry of anguish from the corner of his heart that still wants to believe his friend can be saved. Ryoko's words play back in his head, sounding even colder than before. He mustn't allow emotion to sway him. Koji suddenly switches topics, trying to keep Fuminori off balance. It all comes down to this. Omi and Yo. Fuminori's voice trails off. He's obviously trying to decide how far Koji can be trusted and whether there's room for negotiation. Fuminori has been called out, and now it's time for him to show his hand. I truly don't know anything about Omi. She never came by my house. Yo, on the other hand... Fuminori pauses, then gives a knowing chuckle that sends chills up Koji's spine. Well, I wonder if she'll really want to leave. Koji is relieved to learn Yo's location, that she is, at least, still alive. At the same time, however, he remembers that horrifying phone call. It is clear now that Fuminori played some part in Yo's suffering. Had she already fallen into his trap back then? What has happened to her? How is she being treated? Her wishes finally come true, Fuminori says with venomous sarcasm. She's my property now. I guess you and Omi got what you wanted after all. Koji feels despair settle over his soul. How much lower will this man go? Must Fuminori seek out and destroy every memory of the friendship they once shared? How can I trust you? First, I want you to... Koji instinctively realizes that it's dangerous to push his bluff any further. He hangs up without waiting for a response. Fuminori doesn't know that Koji is still at the cabin in Tochigi. Right now, he's probably worrying about whether Koji will show up in 1 hour or 1 minute. Koji hopes that he'll be able to take advantage of Fuminori's confusion. 3 hours. That's how long it'll take to race all the way back to Tokyo. Koji's afraid that his body won't carry him through such a long drive. His mind is clear, but his limbs still feel half asleep, like they're weighed down with lead. Although he knows that he has to stay resolute, Koji still longs for the peace that he just had a few days ago, when life or death struggles were furthest from his mind. Back then, he could never have imagined himself fighting to rescue a friend from the clutches of a madman. With each passing moment, he feels himself becoming less like the person he was. When this is all over, will he be able to return to his old life? Or will his change continue until it has consumed him utterly? Time is against him. Every second that passes is wasted. Even so, he decides to allow himself just 5 minutes of weakness. For exactly 5 minutes, he leans against the steering wheel and cries. And when his tears have run dry and his heart is calm, Koji starts up his Accord and drives away. Of course, I stare at the silent phone in my hand. There is anger, of course, but something cold and heavy holds my emotions in check. The sense of danger. To be honest, I'm surprised at how calm I am. Yo looks up at me, apprehensively, her head between my thighs. She was attending to my manhood throughout the call. Perhaps mistaking my silence for annoyance, she desperately rubs her breasts against my shaft and attacks the head of my penis with her tongue. The remaining fragments of her memory seem to have joined together, as she has regained some degree of speech. Upon realizing this last night, I began to teach her language once more. I assume she finds our pet's efforts amusing. Still gazing up at me pleadingly, Yo sucks on my penis without even taking the time to breathe. Her ministrations threatened to fill my head with a white fog of pleasure that would impede my thoughts, and besides, my arousal has already vanished. At first I considered making her stop. When I gaze into her puppy dog eyes, however, I begin to think differently. Thanks to Saya, I have a family once again. For the first time, I am becoming aware of the responsibility that places on me. I am now the head of a new Sakisaka household, as well as its only male member. It is my duty to protect, comfort, and ensure the happiness of the women living under my roof. With that in mind, I know that I mustn't show fear or confusion. That would only cause them distress. Continue. I entrust my manhood to Yo's right breasts, basking in the pleasure with one part of my mind while contemplating our current predicament with the other. It is clear that I made a grave error when I failed to finish Koji off 2 days ago. Right now, I need to set my frustration and anger aside and deal with this problem logically. It's time to leave. I have no way of knowing when Koji escaped from the well, or how much he has learned, or how many people he has had contact with since then. Now that it is impossible to know how far the problem has spread, merely disposing of Koji won't guarantee our safety. When the enemy has poisoned your water supply, you can't take the risk that even one drop might remain. Your only chance is to stop drinking the water. Saya returns from the kitchen, where she'd gone in search of a midnight snack. She's munching on her favorite, spare ribs. Purging myself of unease and impatience, I respond in a casual shrug. It looks like we have a little problem. That bastard Koji is still alive. By breaking the news suddenly and without any trace of anxiety, I'm able to avoid frightening Saya. Instead, she is merely surprised. I knew that remaining calm would work. Moreover, I'm currently getting my penis sucked by Yo. It would be hard for anyone to get too serious under these circumstances. Saya, it might be best if we leave this house. Saya lowers her eyes and strokes her chin thoughtfully. It was bound to happen sooner or later. Even without Koji, it's just a matter of time before someone reports the Suzumi family as missing. Saya nods. I can tell that she's reluctant to leave, but at least there's no sadness in her expression. Everything will be fine. I will protect my life with Saya just as I have up until now. I have that power. Knowing that we've overcome one problem fills me with new confidence. By the way, Saya, I'm almost... Saya hastily discards her spare ribs and pushes the still-sucking Yo off of me. Well, that's... Despite her scolding tone, Saya gently and passionately wraps her mouth around my manhood. With my orgasm already charged up by Yo, Saya's ravenous tongue and throat push me over the edge instantly. Saya, I'm... Before Saya finishes, I thrust deep into her throat and unleash my lust as I stare into her eyes, wide with surprise. Even while moaning around my penis, Saya grabs me firmly by the waist and swallows all of my seed without choking. You're so greedy, Saya, I say, smiling wryly as I look at Yo, who's simply lying on the floor. You always keep it all to yourself. After baring her teeth at me grumpily, she burrows her face into my stomach. It's adorable how Saya goes from angry to pleading like this. I find myself reaching down and mussing up her hair. Don't worry, I won't. Now then, we'd better get ready. We can travel light and take the Suzumi family car. I had better withdraw everything that's left in my bank account and carry it as cash. I also need a weapon, something more reliable than a butcher's knife. Koji will most likely follow. He thinks that Yo can be saved. However, I'm not abandoning this house just to run away. As long as Koji knows our location, we're stuck on the defensive. Leaving gives me the chance to regain the initiative and deal with him at a place of my choosing. The next time we meet, I'll kill him with my own 2 hands. I'll make sure to wring every last drop of life out of his body. A shiver runs through me as I anticipate the battle ahead, and my bloodlust burns like orgasmic fire. When Ryoko looks up, the morning sun has already streamed in through the window. Tired from hours of poring over files, she removes her glasses and massages her aching eyes. Her dreams are always filled with horror, yet the night she just spent was more nightmarish than all of them. And it's not over yet. She has only just set foot on the threshold. As expected, the files left by Dr. Ogai Mashihiko were not the sort that Ryoko could simply pick up and read. Fortunately, Dr. Ogai had been too old-fashioned to put his trust in electronic media. If he'd encrypted his files on a computer, she'd have to find a hacker to decipher them. In fact, he had not employed any kind of code in his writing. That would have been too time-consuming by hand. The method of obfuscation he did was quite simple. Of the files Ryoko pulled from his underground lab, the majority turned out to be notes and thesis from Ogai's days as a student. The important papers were the diaries and research notes that had been scattered throughout the piles of worthless scrap. At first, she was unable to understand the documents that she had found. Each sheet was covered with text on one side and blank on the other. Each line was completely unrelated to the next, making it impossible to glean any meaning from the whole. The trick revealed itself, however, when she was sorting pages that made no sense. She found that each line continued on the same line of a different page. In Ogai's diary, for example, the first day began on the first line, then continued not with the next line, but with the first line of the next page. Similarly, the second day was the second line, the third day was the third line, and so on and so forth. After filing all the lines in one set of pages, Ogai had torn them out and scattered them amongst other files. There was no regularity to how the pages were numbered, of course. Unable to locate any sort of key or legend, Ryoko had no choice but to figure out the page order manually. Despite knowing that the task would be exhausting, Ryoko set to it valiantly. Fuck. After separating out all the loose-leaf sheets from the jumbled files, she began to painstakingly link the pages together according to the contents of their first line. She found that a guy had dismantled and scattered his diary each time he completed a number of days equal to the lines on one page, and had done the same with his research notes every 30 pages or so. The diary was much easier to restore, because the entries varied in length. Other pages had a larger number of blank lines. The page with the only one line, therefore, was the last page of the diary, and those with the most blank spaces could be considered closer to the end. Ryoko's perseverance has paid off, for she has already succeeded in restoring several volumes of Ogai's diary. As she reads them, she feels despair draining her spirit, as it has so many times before. This cursed feeling of powerlessness that comes with knowing hidden truths. Those who have tasted it once shall be beaten down by it again and again until the day they die. All secrets are connected, after all. Once you have glimpsed even the tiniest fraction of the world's true face, you have no choice but to watch in horror as the veil rolls itself back inch by inch. All that remains is to wait for the day when insanity will crush your reason under its ever-mounting weight. I have succeeded in communicating with the organism. It shows enormous curiosity, and its intelligence is beyond doubt. See research notes for confirmed voice patterns and body language. Its appetite for knowledge is insatiable, and its learning efficiency is off the charts. However, it exhibits absolutely no desire to be recognized as an individual. Its ego appears to be quite weak, suggesting a psyche wholly unlike that of a human. The speed of the organism's linguistic development is astonishing. When I laughed at its mispronunciations, it immediately picked up the concept of puns. Ever since, it has been employing its entire vocabulary in an attempt to find puns that will make me laugh. Perhaps in a few days' time it will have learned enough language for us to communicate freely. The organism's command of spoken language is now sufficient to facilitate higher-level discourse. But although it has regaled me with questions all day, it remains unable to answer any of mine. Its reply suggests that it only gained awareness after materializing in this universe. It has no knowledge of where it came from. While I am disappointed, the fact that it has reached this level of intelligence only 1 week after starting to think tells me that there is no end to what it can learn, or what I can learn from it. Hypothesis. It is not a naturally occurring organism, but was created by an even more sophisticated sentient life form. This would explain why it has no ego, yet possesses such a hunger for knowledge. It might be some sort of reconnaissance drone that was sent here from another world. Ryoko smiles humorlessly as for the upteenth time since she has started reading. How wonderful would it be if she could laugh the diary off as the delusions of a madman or the work of a science fiction writer. Alas, she knows far too much. When she thinks back to the many horrors that a guy brought onto her life, the words before her take on a chilling credibility. I have confirmed that the organism's brain power far surpasses any humans. This morning I taught it about prime numbers. After I explained the Lucas-Lemaire test and Masurian primes, it began immediately to list examples that I had calculated in its head. I was only able to confirm by memory up to 10 M89, but it continued to list further examples without any trouble. I'm assuming that's 10,000,089? Something like that, right? I don't know. I left it to its calculations, and when I returned a few hours later, I discovered that it had written down more than 70 of them. Computers all over the world are currently working to calculate Masurian primes, but the last one I remember being found was the 39th, back in 2001. When I entered several of the results in my laptop and ran the Lucas-Lemaire test on them, I found that every one was correct. The same is no doubt true of the rest. After all, the organism has never shown the pathological need for respect that it would lead to lie about its accomplishments. I see no reason to doubt its veracity. If I could reveal to the world the expedient method of discovering primes, the prize money would make me a billionaire. Of course, my current research is worth far more than any sum of money. I must keep it a secret. The organism's computational speed exceeds that of the most powerful supercomputers. I can only conclude that its cognitive faculties are beyond anything humanity can imagine. At the organism's request, we have begun a new field of study. Despite its immeasurable aptitude for mathematics, it now desires to concentrate on psychology, or sociology, and the natural sciences. Perhaps our math problems are simply too elementary for it. It has shown especially keen interest in the means by which organisms reproduce and multiply. As it possesses nothing that could be called emotion, I hesitate to use this description, but when it learned about DNA, it seemed somewhat excited. In fact, the organism itself seemed surprised by its reaction. When asked about the nature of the impulse, the organism decided to label it as instinct. If this description is indeed accurate, then this is an extremely interesting development. It would mean that there is a deeper level to its psyche than just the knowledge it has acquired since coming to this world. If I can use this discovery to trace its roots, I might be able to learn what it truly is. Note: candidates for the plane and world of the organism's origins are discussed in On the Silver Key, filed separately. I spent the whole day carrying books into its room. Apparently, the organism is no longer satisfied by the knowledge I am able to impart. It should come as no surprise, considering its linguistic prowess, but the speed at which it consumes texts is astonishing. The diary continues for some time, chronicling the intimate relationship between Ogai and it. In the back of her mind, Druko imagines the old doctor climbing down the well in the middle of the night to hold congress with some inhuman creature in that bizarre laboratory. The image is disturbingly similar to the nightmares she that have scattered the silence of many nights with her screams. What follows, however, makes even her worst nightmares pale in comparison. The organism has made a very strange request. This is the first time it has asked for anything other than food and reading materials. I can hardly believe it, but it wants to consume the sperm of living creatures. This is separate from its desire for food. Once again, it is describing this impulse as instinctive. Now that it has declared itself a life form that requires the seed of males, it has begun to identify itself as female. After all, or after today, I suppose I shall have to start calling the organism a she. Is the personality that she has begun to exhibit really just an imitation created for her amusement? Ever since she started to immerse herself in our literature, she has been acting astonishingly human. She identifies herself as female and already possesses an enormous store of cultural knowledge. Is she trying to create a human identity for herself based on these? I have seen her laugh, grow angry, and today, she cried. Is she just copying our emotional displays? If not, then she is already... Is the soul something that any intelligent life form can acquire? I feel that I'm witnessing something more mysterious than the genesis of life itself. Today is her birthday. Although it's a year late, I wanted to give her a special gift. Saya was the name of my mother's cat. In childhood, she was my sole friend and my beloved. I decided long ago that if I were ever blessed with children, I would give this name to my daughter. Happy birthday, Saya. Let this be the name of your soul. You have earned it. The ability that Saya has discovered in herself is showing more extraordinary results each day. I have no doubt that she is some kind of artist. What exactly it is that she created in her body from the rat semen I gave her. At this point, I can only surmise that it is a type of retrovirus, a reverse transcriptase enzyme that creates exactly what she desires. The rats that have been transformed by her art are so very beautiful now. The many enzymes she secreted by her body, and the various appendages she uses, are discussed in detail in my biological observations, filed separately. Here I will say this. By witnessing Saya perform her operations on several rats, I have gained much confidence in my theory that her body is designed specifically to manipulate the biology of other organisms. Roka looks grimly at the still unsorted mountain of research notes. When she finally manages to separate these papers, she will probably find the many other files mentioned in the diary. Ogai's biological observations, at the very least, she wants to look through before facing the thing called Saya. Under no circumstances does she want to go into battle unprepared. She looks at her watch and sees that it's already 7 in the morning. Assuming Tono Ikoji made no stops, he should be arriving in Tokyo about now. Now that it's too late, she wishes she'd stopped that stubborn fool from leaving, even if she had to shoot him in the leg to do it. Koji pulls up 2 blocks away from the Sakisaka house and stares at the silent building. In the bright light of morning, the house seems shrouded in a dark miasma, like the black hole torn out of the landscape. Is it just a figment of Koji's imagination? Every window is closed, offering no glimpse of the inside. Koji has no way of knowing whether Fuminori is home. A pedestrian walks his dog down the street, glancing back at Koji after he passes the Accord. Koji isn't surprised by the attention. He hasn't bathed or changed clothes since spending the night buried in mud, so he must look like a vagrant even inside his car. When he looks into the rearview mirror, he sees the haggard visage of a man with 1 foot in the grave staring back at him. It's hard to believe that the tired, unshaven face is really his. If he stays here for too long, someone might report him to the police. He'd better pull himself together and get moving. He drives slowly up to the front of Fuminori's house, quickly checks to make sure no one is around, and gets out of his car. Anyone who might be in the house probably heard the sound of the engine, but there is no point in worrying about that now. Koji walks swiftly through the gate and yard to the front door. He puts his hand on the doorknob, forgetting the bell. The time for such pleasantries has passed. The door is unlocked and the knob turns easily in his hand. He puts his ear to the door and listens for any sign of life. He's acting like a thief, he realizes with some shame. But that is the least of his worries now. No sound from within. After checking the street again to make sure no one is looking, he quickly opens the door and disappears inside. An indescribable stink immediately assaults his nostrils. He is already prepared for anything, however, so rather than discourage him, this stench only sharpens his caution to a razor's edge. He has crossed the threshold many times in the past, and his memories of days spent here are still bright. So why? Why does he feel the same ominous, blood-chilling aura that permeated Ogai's home and cabin? Anger and sorrow seize Koji's heart, as though a dear friend's grave has been defiled. Koji doesn't remove his shoes before entering. He knows why he's here and is not to be polite. Every storm shutter is closed, filling the house with a gloom, and he can see nothing but pitch-black darkness throughout the open doors in the hallway. He should have brought this flashlight from his car, he thinks ruefully, then remembers that he dropped the light when Fuminori attacked him. It is still lying in the backyard of the cabin in Tochigi. The house might be empty, then again it might not. Each particle of the air seems charged with silent menace. Is his enemy lurking somewhere in the darkness? It's not hard to imagine Fuminori waiting for a chance to take him by surprise and finish what the well failed to. Koji walks down the first-floor hallway, then climbs the stairs and checks the second floor, too. He moves slowly and carefully, keeping his senses sharp, but feels nothing watching him from the shadows. After completing his rounds safely, he is convinced that the house is empty. He suddenly realizes that his right hand is touching the cold steel of the gun in his pocket. Did he intend to draw the weapon upon encountering Fuminori? Now that Koji thinks about it, his own actions seem mysterious to him. What is he planning to do when he meets Fuminori? Will he lay onto him with curses and epithets? Will he force him to turn himself in? Or will he... Koji shakes his head. This isn't the time for such hopeless questions. If he keeps thinking, he'll stop moving. If he stops moving, fear will paralyze him forever. His only choice is to keep marching on. He has to close the distance to his prey. In any case, Fuminori isn't home. What form their reunion takes will probably be decided at the moment of their meeting. All Koji has to do is not hesitate when that time comes. Still, why does the whole house smell like stagnant water? It's been 3 months since Fuminori distanced himself from his friends. What kind of life has he been leading this whole time? Koji enters the living room and feels along the wall for the light switch. The moment he flips it on, the answer to his question is revealed. How far has Fuminori gone? Koji realizes this is the first time he has encountered Fuminori's insanity in visible form. From the dust piled in the corners of the room, it is clear that the paint was not applied recently. How many nights has Fuminori spent surrounded by this maddening array of color? Why, if such obvious signs were available, why didn't Koji realize that something was wrong before it had gotten this bad? Was he deaf to the dying screams of Fuminori's sanity? Was their friendship really so worthless? As he stands petrified in the unfamiliar living room, Koji directs his anger entirely at himself. If he could, he would like nothing more than to apologize to Fuminori for failing to help him through his suffering. Koji feels that he might have been able to save his friend. Perhaps he is arrogant to think so. But if so, it is arrogance born of kindness. Koji passes through the living room and opens the sliding door that leads to the kitchen. When he enters, he finds that the most disturbing of the house's many stenches is strongest here. Blood. The room is redolent with the smell of countless layers of blood grown stale over time. He peers into the well-used sink. Around the rim, he sees faint brownish-red blotches that water alone couldn't rinse off. Even more obvious are the stains on the dish rag. Such stains are proof that the rag has been used and reused countless times. But what could have been used on it to make it look that sickening burgundy color? Koji stares at the refrigerator next to the counter, as though it were a monster waiting to swallow him whole. He stands motionless until he is able to work up the courage to simply touch it. Then he steels himself, grabs a thick handle, and opens the door. First he'll check the freezer, then the refrigerator. The freezer is packed with frozen meat of varying shapes and sizes. As each piece is wrapped tightly in frozen-over plastic, he can't tell what kind of meat it is. The meat in the refrigerator, however, has already been thawed for consumption. For a while he can only stare in disbelief at the 5 fingers beckoning to him from the back compartment. They are the long, slender fingers of a woman, their bluish tinge giving them the appearance of waxworks. Koji is unable to remember what Omi's hands looked like, even though he had kissed her fingers countless times. When he finished crying after his conversation with Fuminori, Koji promised himself that he would not cry again, and in fact he does not. He regrets his decision, however. He indulged himself too early. He should have saved his soothing tears for this moment, for now he knows that truly nothing is sacred. At last, his doubts about Fuminori have been utterly obliterated. Koji pulls Ogai's revolver out of his pocket and wraps his hand around its grip like he would a charm. Its definite presence, its promise of merciful annihilation, is the only thing that keeps his sanity in check. He will surely use it to kill Sakisaka Fuminori. Not for revenge, not for justice, but to make this world once more a place governed by reason. For that purpose alone, he must eliminate the anomaly. He breathes deep, exhales, then lifts his hand before his face and stares at his spread fingers. Although he's not shaking, he is prepared to face his new objective. Koji sticks the revolver back into his pocket and pulls out his phone. Ladies and gentlemen, hello. And here we have another choice to make. I don't want to quit the game. No, I meant to right click so we can save. Yeah. And we're actually gonna save it right here and do that. Oh yes. Alright. So we're now left with a choice. Do we call Fuminori or do we call Ryoko? And stop doing that. Go on, seriously. Right. Cancel. Okay, cool. So, do we call Fuminori or do we call Ryoko? That is the question. And this takes us down our last 2 paths of Song of Saya. And what happens down those paths? Well, I actually don't remember what does what. But we will find out as that stuff happens. But for now, I think it would be a great time to call this video here and build up some suspense for the next 2. They'll be coming out one after the other, and hopefully they will be the entire route to the end of both of the endings there. So yeah, what'll happen? Will Koji die? Will Fuminori die? Will Ryoko, when we call her, come to our aid? Or will she still be nose deep in files and paperwork trying to figure out what the hell Saya is? Find out next time on Song of Saya. Yeah. Anyhow, so until next time everyone, thanks for watching and bye-bye.